Hello, you're watching Talk On, the podcast of the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology in Halle, Germany. My name is Christoph Brumann.
And I'm Jovan Maud. And in this podcast, we're going to be talking about current research and debates in the field of social anthropology.
Today, my guest is Mario Schmidt, a colleague and senior research fellow at the Institute, and we will be talking about your new book, right, Mario, which is entitled Migrants and Masculinity in High-Rise Nairobi, The Pressure of Being a Man in an African City. So, what is this about? Pressure, man, high rises? What do we learn in the book?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here, Christoph. I'm grateful to be able to present my book, which is about, as the title says, it's about migrant men who came to Nairobi from predominantly rural Western Kenya to become successful economically, romantically and socially successful men. And the main location of the book is a high-rise settlement in Nairobi's eastern part called Pipeline. And
okay, where does the name derive from? Pipeline is a strange name, right?
The name of the estate derives from a company, it's called Kenya Pipeline Company.
Ah, okay.
Which is like...
which bequeathed it to a place, yeah, okay.
No, it used to be, or it's still there, like there is an estate that used to be the housing estate of the company. So it used to be called after that housing company. Now the high-rise estate developed around the Kenya Pipeline Company housing estate, but the name stuck.
Yeah, okay. So it's basically internal migration. So within Kenya, where people from the countryside go to the city to become big shots, to become successes, right? And Pipeline is the first destination, right?
Exactly. It's about internal migrants. Like the men that I spent time with during fieldwork were Kenyans, Kenyan men from Western Kenya who came to Nairobi to become successful.
But the place is special, right? You're saying that this is an unusual type of settlement in an African context, or perhaps not so unusual any longer, but anyway, it seems to be, right?
It's not unusual in the sense of being something that is rare in the landscape of Nairobi.
Ah, okay.
Like high-rise settlements are popping up all over the place in Nairobi in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
But Pipeline is special in the sense of the scale.
Yeah.
It's the most densely populated and the largest of these estates, and also the most notorious, if you can say so. For example, newspaper reports, and even the imaginations of Nairobian middle class. If you mention the name Pipeline, it triggers certain ideas about that space. But generally, why it is so, it's not like something that is like when you ask an internal migrant in Nairobi, are you living in a high-rise?
Yeah.
The chances of him or her answering yes is not low.
Oh, okay.
But when you look at the academic and also academic output, or even like the NGO sector and even politicians, high-rise settlements are kind of marginalized in these reports or in these debates.
I see. Okay, so usually, let's say, urban slums or like poverty-stricken urban areas are usually lower mid-rise and not like. But this is a high-rise but not a fancy one, but one with fairly, let's say, socially difficult conditions, right? Challenging conditions.
Exactly. Yeah? Like most of the discussions about housing in Kenya are targeting like what is called slums.
Yeah.
Like endless, sprawling settlements with like mostly just not even just like one floor.
Yeah.
Like iron sheet housing and constructed with woods and all kinds of materials like shacks
But this is different. I
This is
mean,
different.
the photos
This-
show like
exact-
10 stories,
This
right?
is like,
really like substantial high rises, right?
10 floors and
Yeah.
very densely populated.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very different from these
And also like
traditionally informal settlements.
and the housing units itself, the flats are fairly narrow, right? You describe them of having like 15, 16 square meters or so, which also means then combination with densely placed high rises that really a lot of people live in a confined space, right?
Yes, so we have different housing options.
Mm.
Like let's say a migrant wants to find an apartment in Pipeline. He has several options.
Mm.
The most common one is what you described as so-called single rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Just a single room with like 14 to 15 square meters,
Mm-hmm.
no bathroom, no showers, and those like bathroom facilities are shared on one floor, let's say.
Okay.
So like
Mm.
16 or whatever, how many single rooms are sharing several bathrooms and showers.
Okay.
But we also have what is called bed sitters,
Mhm.
which is basically a single room, also not much more than 15, 16 square meters, but there's a toilet and bathroom inside.
Yeah.
Then we also have a few one-bedroom
Mhm.
and two-bedroom apartments, but
Mm.
those are not the places where the majority of migrants find their new home, because these single rooms are comparatively cheap.
Yeah. Okay, that's the attraction, but it's not like I mean, what you're describing is that there are also couples and families living there, right? It's not exclusively single men occupying single person rooms or so. To the contrary, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's crammed even more than the, let's say, physical conditions alone would suggest, because a lot of people share these small units usually, right?
Yeah, roughly around like a survey that I did with around 60 households or something like that, around that number, yielded kind of like an average of 4 inhabitants per single room. So you have
Wow.
like mostly
Sounds crammed.
like
Yeah.
couples with 1 or 2 children or
Yeah,
relatives from the village coming to visit. So it's like
Mhm.
it's very densely populated, and it has like the estate has one of the highest population densities worldwide. Like a
Okay.
conservative estimation that I kind of extrapolated from
Yeah.
like the amounts of registered voters
Mhm.
and some other data that I could find, and also a survey that I did of a small area.
Mm.
Like the area is roughly like 1 square kilometer,
Yeah.
and we have like at least around 200,000 people. So it's like really, really
Yeah. Sounds
densely populated.
sounds squeezed. So it's a
Basically-
really urban place. Yeah.
It's a really urban place, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's also what makes it kind of
Yeah, but
stand out in.
yeah, but also, I think I can confirm that ignored or not given the attention it deserves in urban studies literature, urban anthropological literature in Africa so far, which is tended on other kinds of places, low-rise areas, or I don't know, fancy estates, etc. I mean, that's also been studied, but this kind of place hasn't been studied. But it's not just. I mean, what I also find is that in the book, I mean, you give a very lively picture of the place, and I really reading it, I often had the feeling I can exactly imagine how it's like to be there, live there, etc. But that said, it's not, let's say, a general ethnography just of Pipeline, but it's a focused one, because you talk about pressure and you talk about masculinity. Let's probably start with pressure. What is it about pressure that interested you?
So while I was spending time in Pipeline, I like for once, most of the time I spent with migrant men.
Yeah.
Because I used to do field work in Western Kenya. So my first connections were former friends and interlocutors from the village.
Okay.
That I ended up spending time with in Pipeline, then later on also sharing an apartment with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like my entrance into the place was kind of
semi-accidental, if you will, right?
Semi-accidental, but also kind of like it was migrant men who helped me to set foot there and to gain or to enlarge my network there. So that was like I spent a lot of time with men. While I was spending time with men, and maybe as a background, most of the fieldwork time overlapped with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
So there were also like economic recession in Kenya, worldwide, a lot of problems, a lot of people were losing their jobs. So a lot of men that I spent time with talked about being pressured, being depressed, having ulcers or high blood pressure, other kinds of somatic effects of a stressful life.
Pressure creates pressure inside the body if it's high blood pressure.
Exactly, for example, or like the headaches, insomnia, all kinds of bodily experiences that came out of the feeling or the experience of being under pressure economically and also socially.
Okay.
So
what kind of pressure? Or
like I think on the one hand we have those things that cause pressure that are best described as catering for the daily necessities, let's say, like finding food, finding enough money to pay the rent at the end of the month, such like things. But
school fees you mentioned, right?
School fees
if
also.
Their kids.
Yeah, if
right?
their kids' school fees.
Which seems to be expensive.
Yeah, when like that is what I describe as like three, we can call them three catastrophic events that can happen in any male migrant's life.
Yeah.
One is like the education, school fees that happen kind of predictably.
Yeah, okay.
But then we have like funeral expenses, like funeral are a very important social event in Western Kenya. So if somebody dies, either somebody from the family who's living elsewhere, like let's say in Nairobi, or somebody even dies in the village, it consumes a lot of money and the financial means.
Yeah.
And of course, sickness. So majority of Kenyans do not have
good health insurance.
So if somebody, either themselves or somebody from the family or friend, gets sick, that causes a lot of pressure as well. But those things are more or less there for many, many people. But what I was more interested in was that a lot of migrant men actually situated the cause of pressure with the expectation of their intimate others. So a lot of men talked about relatives in the village who were expecting them to be successful, like sending remittance back home, and especially potential girlfriends or partners, as well as actual girlfriends and partners who, according to the migrant men I spent time with, expected a lot of them in terms of economic success, development, consumer goods, and like to take over that, what in Kenya sometimes is described as the breadwinner role.
Yeah, that's probably not a phenomenon exclusive to Kenya, but apparently global, people subscribe to it, right?
Exactly. So I was more interested in how men situate that cause of pressure with mostly kind of gendered the expectations of women.
Yeah, okay.
And that was...
Yeah, and you say, it's a particular age cohort of men, you also say, right? That most of the men you were kind of interacting with were between the ages of 25 and 40?
That's exactly the age bracket that I was spending time with. I mean, that's also kind of my... I'm on the on the older end of that age bracket, like not yet 40, but almost 40. But so I was not looking at... And that's also one of the things why that are important to highlight, because a lot of the research being done on masculinity is done on younger men. In their early 20s that are still like trying to find their ways in Nairobi, or and a lot of the literature is also on masculinity. A lot of the literature on masculinity is also on men who were born in Nairobi. Instead of informal settlements, for example. So in my case, majority of men are older. Majority of men are quite well educated, and
that's what you describe, right? Often have impressive educational backgrounds, etc. Have family or found families in the place.
Exactly.
That also exists. And you distinguish pressure from stress. That I found quite interesting, because it's, often enough probably people wouldn't distinguish between the two, but you do, and you think that, and you say that pressure is distinct from other kinds of, let's say, from stress, for example, right?
Yeah, I can, like, we can say that, like, in that sense, I differentiate the two, but it's not based on the ethnography itself. Like, people sometimes use these terms interchangeably,
Themselves,
like
sure.
I'm stressed or
yeah.
I'm pressured or something. So it's not like. But for me, I was trying to, like I said, I was interested in men's location of the cause of pressure in the expectations of their intimate others.
Yeah.
And so how I try to define pressure for I'm trying to make it into like let's say, my attempt to make it into a valuable analytic concept.
Sure. Yeah. Ethic, if we use that old distinction between emic and ethic. Yeah, it's an ethic concept then, yeah?
Yeah, kind of a mixture. But yeah, so my idea is that pressure, the experience of pressure is caused by an object or an ideology or a narrative or goal that the person who is experiencing pressure is actually intimately attached to. So the migrant who experiences pressure from their rural relatives, for example, to send remittance back home, does want to send remittance back home.
Yeah, it's a justified expectation in the migrant's view, right?
In the migrant's view, the expectation of the other is justified in terms of, I call it qualitatively justified. So the migrant agrees that
he should be doing that.
And like the relatives most probably have helped him to come to Nairobi,
in the first place,
to get there. Probably in Nairobi, he initially spent time with other relatives. So there's a lot of social obligations that have accrued over time. So same with the majority of married men, like they're not saying that the expectation to provide economically
is the wrong
and to perform another expectation, like to perform sexually, that these are wrong expectations. They're actually justified expectations, and men want to
fulfill them.
But the critique that they are offering of these expectations is that they are quantitatively unjustified. People are asking too much of them.
Yeah, okay.
So
they're asking the right things, but too much of the right things, yeah?
Exactly. So that creates the feeling
too many of the right things.
Too many or too much.
Yeah, whatever.
Exactly. Which creates an interesting kind of, almost like a paradox, because it's like migrant men are trapped inside these expectations. They are suffering from these expectations because it creates, like I said, the pressure is not something that is external. It's not like there's also a form you can also say
internalized, it's normalized.
It's internalized and it has negative effects in terms of can be sleeplessness or can be too much sleeping. It depends on the individual person.
We describe a lot of cases where how it plays out, but
So
interesting. Basically, the second big topic then is masculinity. I mean, but it's already come up. But obviously, there's a specificity to the expectations in that it's men experiencing the pressure. I mean, you didn't do much research with women. You couldn't, as you say. So their pressures might be different ones, but definitely men feel they're under pressure, and what this pressure is about is that they are themselves also male and subscribing to particular ideals of masculinity, and the source of a pressure is often a female source, right?
According to
in their view of things, sure. Where did you observe all this? So ethnographically speaking, I mean, the book describes a couple of spaces, largely male spaces, where, let's say, both male aspirations, economic aspirations, but also pressure was in a way on display. So what were these spaces?
Yeah, basically, I spent roughly 3 years in Pipeline.
Yeah.
I can say that 3 years Pipeline was my main
field,
my home.
Okay.
Though due to the COVID situation, I had to travel back to Germany a couple of times.
Yeah.
But in those 3 years, initially I spent time in one of those bedsitters alone, and then later on I moved together with two friends who also had their own kinds of romantic and economic challenges, and so that there was that kind of daily
exposure to the topic in a way.
Also because I was living alone, I was mostly eating together with friends in the evening. So I also kind of through that got to know new people and have created a network of interlocutors and friends also. But
you also describe particular spaces where men meet and basically talk about masculinity, about pressure, etc. For example, that gym. But what are these spaces, or which were the ones that were, in a sense, most significant for doing your research?
Yeah. So when you look at the structure of the book, like after the introduction, the first part of the book has the title "Experiencing Pressure." That is mostly based on my experiences living together with these two friends, and also interviews that I conducted. I incorporated data from a research project on the economic effects of COVID. So this, like the initial part, introduces the place. Then offers
and
an
general problem, if you will.
General problem overview of economic pressures and overview of like romantic pressures. Now, when you look at the romantic pressures that are mostly happening in the houses of people, that is an ethnographic space that is very difficult to access because it's a very intimate sphere.
And if it's 16 square meters, and if there are 3 or 4 people living there, well,
exactly. So
it's already quite cramped.
So, and the second part of the book is called "Evading Pressure," is focusing on mostly 3 homosocial spaces. One being the gym that you talked about, where mostly men went on a, like we can say, on a daily basis, like 6 days a week, to work out, mostly with a close group of male friends. Like also a small gym that was actually located in one of those single rooms, so like a gym in 15 square meters. So it could also only train like 6 or 7 people, and only if you are friends, because you can basically only do the same exercise, because there's not enough space to do your own stuff all the time. And
so it's a very social gym compared to most gym experiences in this world, where people kind of isolate, right?
Yeah, they're also kind of those spaces that have a more individualistic kind of atmosphere, but in this specific one where I spent most of the time, it was a very social experience. And then there was a group of male migrants that had formed an investment group. Again, male migrants from Western Kenya again.
Kind of savings and investment club?
Saving and investment, exactly, a saving and investment club.
Correct description.
And that saving and investment club also had, like most of the people that were members of this investment club also met regularly in bars and in like concerts, music concerts, and playing pool or video games, stuff like things. So there was also an informal group where these men kind of performed almost the opposite of what the investment, like while in the investment group, they were kind of portraying themselves as like prudent economic investors. Now, on this shadow side of the investment group, there was a performance of wasteful masculinity, where people talked a lot about women, like in a sexualized way. But also
of a misogynist way,
also,
as far as I remember.
Exactly, in a misogynist way, and then a lot of drinking alcohol, a lot of also bar fights and all kinds of things. And so that was like that. Can call it that dialectic of these two. Was extremely interesting too.
Very much the same networks or same people, performing, let's say, future entrepreneurs on the one side, in a very rational, as you describe, a very rational and formal setting of the club with all its rules and procedures, and then the same, or not at the same time, but afterwards they might then hang out at a bar and display the other side, right? Hard playing urban guys that are kind of pretending to be the successes they not really are yet, right? A lot of pretense also goes into performing economic success, as you describe it, right?
Yeah, there's also that part where a lot of men, like what I call practices of pretense, where they try to pretend to be economically successful while they're not, like by wearing nice suits or like just basically by also through open, like not open, but like if you know them, you know it's deception and lies in order to convince women, for example, for sexual reasons. And then the third space is like mostly an online space where like I say, what's sometimes described as the manosphere, like a global movement of often anti-feminist narratives and ideologies that are shared online. And we have a couple of Kenyan social media personalities that are also that it's also created chat groups and like on Twitter and stuff like that. So that's why I was also interested in how migrants relate to that, and how in which cases they like kind of take inspiration from these also often misogynistic.
Yeah, misogynistic and plus this male,
anti-feminist.
the male actually being the born leader, etc.
Exactly.
And you'd only have to remind yourself of that role and put women in their place, and then things will play out in a good way. So basically, that's the belief, right?
That's the belief in the more radical parts or sectors of this, but there's also quite diverse. So there are also groups of men who meet physically to discuss.
That's what you're
so
describing.
It's like it's more diverse than that. But generally, all of these spaces, like the investment group, the informal group of friends that are like drinking and celebrating this kind. It's also a very rural kind of masculinity, I would say. Like a bit of violent and like the gym, and also this online sphere. All of these spaces, they don't critique the idea of the male breadwinner. So none of these spaces offers a true alternative to the male breadwinner. It's mostly that it's like either trying to gain access to that role. That's mostly for the what I call these masculinity consultants. Like how do you become a successful man that can provide for his family? You have to do this and this and this and that. So they offer like advice on how to change your life. And then in the gym, like that idea of having a strong physical body, that's also part of the general kind of idea of what it means to be a man. Here now, we just find men focusing on this. And kind of trying to compensate for their lack in economic success, while being well aware that you can't trump lack of money with physical. The idea still remains, even in the gym, that any ugly guy with a pot belly and physically weak, as long as he has money, there will be no chance for us to
compete.
And then reinforcing these stereotypes about like female desire for consumer goods and female interest in money and material things and
So basically, the basic idea that there's a lack of social critique, right? Overall, and basically everyone, while let's say not being too happy with one's current own position in the game, but basically supports the game as such, right? You just want to win. So, and basically that's what all these exclusively male spaces seem to be about, to basically reinforce each other's belief that this is possible and that this will ultimately arrive. It's only a question. It's only a matter of time, of effort, of putting either pulling weights or I don't know, making prudent investment choices, and success will one day come. But what's never questioned apparently is the fact is this male breadwinner ideal that's behind it, right? And
exactly. That ideal is rarely questioned, if at all. And it's precisely because I think, as you mentioned, like the majority of migrant men, they didn't come to the city to critique the breadwinner model and
or let's say more generally the capitalist, the brutal capitalist condition under which everyone is living, right?
Exactly. And also not patriarchy or the general like supremacy of men over women. What they criticize is the fact that they want to make it. Like
and they're not yet there.
They don't want to change the game. They just want to
win it.
Change their position in it. But it rarely happens. So,
and underline one sentence that comes rather late in the book, where you say that basically they also deny women the agency to define gender roles, right? So basically, it's them thinking about defining what proper male, proper female should be, etc. It's we don't see it being discussed with partners, with women in general. So that's indeed a constant, it seems, right?
Yeah, I think it's a constant, but I think I would add that it's vice versa.
Yeah,
like women also play a part in that denial.
Yeah.
So like there's no common ground for discussing gender roles between both men and women. So it's not like that women are
craving it and men are
for
rejecting them also. So that's a mutual thing. Yeah. Okay.
There's even that kind of stereotypical idea that, and sometimes I did observe it, that it's very difficult for men to engage with their partners to discuss financial problems, because women might tell them that is not my problem.
Yeah,
you are the man and you just go out and find a job. So I think there's a mutual scapegoating that is happening here. Like both men are blaming women for economic problems and women are blaming men for the same. And there is no kind of, I don't see any movement or any kind of possible trajectory where the political system as such, the political economic system maybe, because of course in Kenya you find a lot of political debates about current leaders that should be replaced with other leaders, but there's no debates about the actual like political economic system and how like actually elites are like kind of siphoning off money. Because when you look at also who enabled the rise of a place like Pipeline, it is the Kenyan elite who were looking for a profitable investment. And when you look at these houses, you can imagine like they're houses with several hundreds of rooms, where of course that's then the people building these houses, they can most of that like sometimes the land is acquired through dubious means.
Sure.
And then also the material that is used. There are several sources that are suggesting that the materials being used are also not of the best quality. So you can build something in a very cheap kind of manner, and then you just like get money out of it. And so there's also that, and those are often, according to rumors and what I've heard, the members of the political or economic elite of Kenya. So.
Didn't you meet any happy relationships, or didn't you meet couples where, let's say, these expectations of the two genders of men and women kind of clicked a little bit better than these cases, where apparently it seems to be strained everywhere, at least the people to talk to?
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues that I really thought about a lot, because I felt that I was risking to portray Pipeline or the space as a very negative space where there are no functioning relationship. But I do believe that due to the nature of fieldwork and how you create networks, and due to the anonymous and also very intimate like sphere of these single rooms where couples are living, I by now believe that in fact there are quite a number of successful relationships that are there. But part of their success lies in the fact that men do not engage in these masculine activities.
These all male spaces.
You know, like for example, in the gym, you find men that come to work out before they go to the job. And then they come out after they come from the job.
Sure.
So they avoid
being at home, avoid being with their partners.
The same that you can say the same of men who are starting to drink in the early afternoons in a bar. Like obviously those men don't have successful relationships. And then when you become closer to these like groups of men who engage in what I call wasteful masculinity, again, there might be some self-fulfilling prophecy here that majority. So I do think that there were quite a number of. But I would say, like, I would still say that these successful relationships, they were based upon, like, it was luck also. That the husband kept the job. That the husband found a well-paying job. So it doesn't mean that these relationships are based on, like now we would call them from a Western perspective or feminist perspective, more progressive gender notions. It doesn't mean that those successful couples discuss the issues in an emotionally mature way or something. Just means that the probably it cannot just mean that
Or
the
maybe
men,
they did, but
maybe
yeah.
they did, but
Yeah,
it's also possible that the man was just successful,
yeah.
and then it functions.
Then it
The
works.
relationship
Yeah? And then
functions
these strains do not arise, which also means that a lot of what you're describing also ultimately is really due to economically very challenging situation, particularly when COVID is coming on top, right?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Mario. That was really interesting. It's a great book. I really enjoyed it. Clearly written, not too long, which also I think is a merit in these days when we all have so little time. Basically, just 160 pages, and in addition to the printed edition, you also put out an open access book that everyone can access free of charge. So I hope it will find its readers. Thank you for listening in to another episode of Talk On, and see you next time.